last Thursday night. They had two guests from Vermont that came down to give their proposal for developing some cross-country bike road trails on the Riverlands. They had barely been able to walk them because of the snow, so they're going to come back in a couple of weeks and do it again. But they gave an overall basic idea of the type of thing that they do. These individuals have been part of 6 different mountain bike development projects in Maine and New Hampshire, mostly on ski slopes. So they're converting things like gun stock during the off-season into the ability to have cross-country and motorbike, mountain bike trails. And as a matter of fact, in the Gunstock area, they claim that they had developed about 12 miles worth of trails already. And
Is this the group that we used early on?
No.
No, it is not.
These are brand new,
Okay.
but in fact, people like Darcy Foley, who was an avid bikist and a national competitor on a very high level, knew these people and have been on some of the mountain bike trails that they have created and said they were really, really good. And they got hired by the state of New Hampshire to develop 2 mountain bike groupings in New Hampshire, so they've got some really good creds. The presentation was really well accepted by the Trails Committee.
And that's for the River Trail, River,
Riverlands.
All on the
Land.
Riverlands.
yeah.
Now that the Board of Selectmen has permitted some work to be done there, we're moving full steam ahead. The 16th, look that up for me, please. The 16th of April, I believe, is the second Saturday in April?
No, we have a meeting that
No,
16th.
what's the second date?
13th, sorry.
13th, okay. Then on the 13th of April will be Earth Day. We could not have it on the 7th, the first Saturday in April, as is the norm throughout the country to have Earth Day then, because there are 2 religious holidays that are right proximal to that Saturday. So we skipped a week and we're having it on the 13th. Anyone who wants to come, we are working again on the Riverlands, and we're going to start at 8 in the morning and we'll run until noontime. And it's all going to start at the sheds. So anyone who wants to come, bring your gear with you. All you got to do is have gloves, or we have them for you. Wear footwear that is appropriate to taking walks. We'll be about halfway across the Riverlands heading towards Holland Road. And it's a basic cleanup. Now, some of you will remember the last cleanup we had on that site, which only went halfway, and we collected 108 old tires in one day. I mean, besides all of the other detritus that we picked up, 108 tires have been cast off on that site. And unfortunately, one of the members in walking on the site back in December discovered another tire dump. It's not a bad one, but it looks like there's probably 18 or 20, maybe 22 tires in the dump. He couldn't move them because of the snow, but we'll send a crew out and have them take them out.
Where are they gonna put them?
We stack them up, and the DPW piles them into the DPW lot and contacts a person outside of Boston, I think it's Chelsea. They come in and pick them up and dispose of them properly.
I think it's through the Mosquito Control Project.
Yes,
They
it
get
is.
rid of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it works really well because they came and they picked them up and they actually thanked us for them. Okay.
geez, Dave, if I give you some numbers, could you check them this weekend? I got,
Absolutely, not a problem. You want me to check the tread for you too?
yeah, all right. All right, No Lakes Advisory, and we can move on to the minutes for March 5th.
Make a motion that we pass the minutes of March 5th.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? What was the comment?
They were well done.
Oh, I'll tell you, you'd do anything for a free coffee. All right, we are not to 6:15. What do you got?
I have a couple old business things that
Go
people
for it,
aren't coming
yeah.
in for, just to let you know about 179 Main Street. The gentleman came last time to talk about the plans, the one that was with the asphalt millings in the back. So I did get an update from them. They don't have a plan ready for this meeting, so I told them they didn't have to come in. They are working on it. I was provided with some email correspondence with Burton Engineering. Burton Engineering's gone through and reviewed everything they have in their file for the work they did there previously for them. They didn't have any survey data past the guardrail, so they're gonna need to go back out and do that with the snow cover and the snow bankings back there. They're kind of waiting till snow melt, so they will be working on that, and I'll keep checking in with them. So we just asked for a little more time to work on that.
Becky, while we're doing that, can we also ask them to pull the plans for the gas station so that we're prepared for that? Because
one next
Burton
door?
Engineering did the same one. It was all
Yeah.
part of the same plan.
Well, we have someone hopefully coming in tonight for that one.
Oh,
But,
okay.
yeah, Burton did work
Oh,
on
did
that
they
one
do?
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, the gentleman, we sent a letter out for that one. He did call the office yesterday, and talk to Ashley about the meeting, so
So they're
he's,
coming in?
that's
That's
our
it.
understanding. He was supposed to call back today to talk to me, but never called, so.
What's his name?
Joseph?
Yes. I probably wrote down the last name. but I don't-
He's the property owner. It was a Realty LLC, which was shown as the
Oh, okay, yeah.
business owner on the
Mhm.
business, the card, the property card, so. So I'll keep working with them, but it sounds like, they're trying to looking at where water's naturally, running off the parking lot there. I think you saw it kind of channelizes towards the back there, maybe trying to do something in those areas,
For 179, you mean?
going
Yeah.
back to
For
one
the,
seventy-nine.
for the other, we should, maybe if we have a site visit next Tuesday.
Go
we
back
should
out there and
go
look
back
at
out
it.
there behind the gas station.
Well, we can actually, if this gentleman comes in tonight, then I'm gonna try to schedule something with him anyways to go out there and look at it, so.
Yeah, we could cover the permission tonight too, so that we can go in from the back end of the gas
Yeah.
station
Okay.
instead of the other way around. Blueberry Lane doesn't give good access.
No, it does not. Unless you wanna go to the little stream.
No, thank you.
That's not bad.
It's over my head.
Well, I wouldn't walk up the stream. Becky and I climbed up the side.
Dave's idea of good access is going downhill fast.
Me and my cane.
I mean, Becky and I reached the base camp and, not that long.
A quick update, no one is coming in for our enforcement orders for Mass DOT. I did issue letters for both Cedar Lake and for the Route 20. I didn't get the letters out till last week, so
Yeah.
Bill called me today and said he wasn't given enough time to come to our meeting tonight, so he wasn't able to make it tonight. Did give him dates for our upcoming meetings, but in my message from him, he did indicate about the Route 21, that he thought that we had resolved that. So, that it wasn't their pipe. And I said, no, we didn't resolve that. We had a site visit, we had discussion.
He really said that to you?
Yeah, it was in his
That's
message that it was
amazing, huh?
resolved, yeah.
Yeah.
So I sent an email back saying I got your message and, that one's not resolved, no decisions can be made on
What
site.
plan does he not get?
You should have said, yes, we resolved it, it's your pipe.
Yeah.
But I did, send a letter kind of summarizing everything and said, you've only sent us a plan from 1925, et cetera. I said it's our understanding that, you're saying it's not yours, however, we've been provided with adequate information on that. It does convey your stormwater, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
So I told them our next two meeting dates, which are April 2nd and April 16th,
Yes.
so we should
We've got an
expect
expert
someone.
in the audience. You want to give us a summary of what Route 20 looked like in 1925? Going up to Big Al.
That was low.
It's like unbelievable. They gave us a plan for 1925 and said that the pipe doesn't belong to them. This is the state.
I did go out last week with DPW to look at it too, because they do a lot of mapping of the stormwater. I mean, some of the stuff from the side roads across the street do connect to that, but it's their stuff. They don't really know whose pipe it is either, but we had the same observations. They actually got down in that catch basin off the side, which is kind of like the little dry well almost. And that pipe, it looks like it goes out and then goes down. So they thought maybe it was clogged, but they're not positive because you can't really see up it, so it looked dark. But, I showed them the two catch basins on Route 20, and I'm like, well, you can tell water's not getting into it from here, but do you think water's coming from across? They weren't really sure if there was other things going on there, so.
That's what I was curious about. So they didn't identify where the water's coming from across the street?
Well, that's coming from, I think, down, this school in Church Street over there. Those are tying in. And they think that there's probably still from the staining on the pipe, like that there's probably some water that's going through there. But it doesn't look like it's coming out of our pipe anymore, going into the river. But I think a lot of it is because the one of the catch basins, or the two that are in front of the old driveway that goes down,
Yep.
those are blocked.
Right.
So water's just flowing down. I even showed them, like, you see here, it's not getting in there. They're like, do you want me to unblock it? I'm like, well, not right now, because it's only gonna cause more problems,
Right.
so.
One other point of clarification, you said the pipe looks like it drops down. Is that a deliberate pipe connection, or is that where the pipe has sagged?
I don't know. They thought it was more almost like two pipes connecting
Okay.
and going up. I didn't go down to the bank and look up in there. They're climbing up the fallen tree. I'm like,
There must be a kid in my
But,
family. who
Did you
gets
have an
up there.
assistant that was young and, oh, not, that you're not.
well, DPW guys were out there doing it now. Oh.
You're looking for trouble,
Just
boy.
lost all my brownie points.
Yeah,
So and I actually asked them, to look at their plans, didn't really have anything. He was checking with his Mass Highway connection, and they kind of looked up and gave me some records about deeds over there too. I mean, I didn't see anything with the plans they gave me, so it doesn't look like anyone has this pipe on there, but their plans don't even show that old catch basin structure off the side of the road, which is obviously there, so.
Right.
Obviously they didn't have,
And
map
it's
all of their
completely
things,
filled,
so,
Covered up.
yeah.
unbelievable.
DPW was gonna go back out and cover those too, so no one falls in them, so
Good,
should be good.
yeah.
I sent a very long summary letter about Cedar Lake and what we've worked on so far, the orders that we issued and where we stand with those. You know, told them, yes, they've addressed some things, these things are still outstanding. Sent
And
that to Bill.
copies of that went where?
All right, so the one you were talking about was the one for the Cedar Lake Association letter. That's the one, and that one, they sent that letter out, so Cedar Lake Association had their own letter. They actually had a meeting, Raul and Suzanne that's been coming in, had I think just a phone conversation with Ann Goby. And she was having a meeting, it was either today or tomorrow, with DEP and Mass DOT about stuff like this, my understanding. So they were gonna give her all the letters, their letters, our letters, and she was very interested in this, so.
Good.
But I didn't send our letter to them, because the one that you were sent, that letter and your response, that was their letter, so I thought that you just meant their letter. I'm pointing at you, Dave.
Dave, I didn't respond to anything, I edited a letter that,
Did you want me to send our letter to her?
We agreed at the board meeting that we were sending the letter to the boss of the DEP in Worcester Central Region, and we were sending it to the senator and to the rep. And if the boss doesn't know what kind of shenanigans the local guys are pulling, then we're screwing up.
Well-
Because we have enforcement orders that are not being enforced.
Well, I think when we talked, that was back before they did anything. That was.
But they
whatever.
still haven't done a damn thing.
Well, they've done some things. Well, I sent this letter to Bill. I copied his boss on it. I sent it to DEP, and I gave a copy to Cedar Lake. So Cedar Lake did give this to Ann Goby
so
too,
it did go
so.
to Bill's boss.
Yeah.
It did go to Central? Or did it go to his boss in Westboro?
Are you're talking about Mass DOT?
Yeah,
It went to his boss in Central,
in Central,
yes.
okay.
Yep.
Because my concern is that they haven't done what they said they were gonna do, and now the lake is filling up again.
Well,
So we're not getting the plume out of there this year.
they did. They got the 2 sediment piles out that were identified, but that's it. And they
Yeah, well, that
didn't
was
identify anything else, and I said that in my letter too. So what I said in my letter was that they did address that. However, we had asked them to have an environmental consultant go out there and assess the area. And as far as, from my understanding, that has not been completed, so we don't know pretty much if there's additional impacts. The 2 areas that were identified by their surveyors, so I put that in the letter, when I went out there, it was just 2 surveyors out there, have been removed. However, the assessment by the environmental consultant hasn't been given to us yet, and it's not our understanding that's been done for the drainage structures or anything that's entered any resource area. So resource
Do we
area
think it's
impacts.
been started?
No, I don't think they,
I
I
don't
think
think
they
it's
just gave
even-
us a name from BSC Group, said, yep, this is the person that's working on it. And then I went out there to meet that person, there was 2 surveyors out there. So I went out there and I talked to them when they were there, they were only told to survey the area right by the swale and the blowout. And then they haven't done anything on behalf of that, so.
That's why I get so disturbed about it, because you know that they have an environmental consultant that does work for the Department of Transportation in Massachusetts all the time. And that they're not willing to send someone to Sturbridge to take care of two separate problems? That's crazy. Two problems on one lake.
Yeah.
That's why I say we have to keep making noise, otherwise this just becomes part of the shadow image.
Do you want me to
Goes away.
send you copies of the letters that I sent them and
Yeah, why don't
give
you
you the
send-
Cedar Lake
yeah.
one?
Yeah,
Okay, and it's 6:17, so if we wanna,
yeah. It is 17, we're 2 minutes beyond. Request for determination of applicability for 135 Shore Road, construction of a deck over an existing patio to a single-family house.
I need to read the opening statement first.
Okay, go ahead. Kay Freeland.
In the interest of saving time, the Sturbridge Conservation Commission will hold all public hearings tonight for work within a wetland, water body, or resource area and/or within the 200-foot buffer zone to a wetland, water body, or resource area in accordance with the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, and associated regulations, and the Town of Sturbridge Wetland Bylaws and associated regulations. We will not be reading the newspaper ad. Prior to opening the first hearing for each project, the applicant is to submit proof of notification to abutters within 200 feet of the subject property line, and proof of legal newspaper advertisement. These items are not submitted, the public hearing will not open. Additionally, prior to the start of each public hearing, we will announce the location of the project, the applicant, and the applicant's representative. If any of the visitors have not legibly signed in yet, please do. Also, if any visitors are recording this meeting, please let us know. Thank you.
All right, you're on.
Hi, I'm Carrie, and my dad Steve just came to support. He's not representing me. I'm representing myself.
Carrie, could you guys go to the other chair so that we get you on the mic?
Carrie, I'll take your, the legal ad and stuff.
The legal ad that she sent me.
Thank
And
you.
I sent it with my application.
Yep.
But that just shows
Perfect.
you should already have.
Thank you, perfect.
We don't need the microphone for us, but the visiting public on TV loves your voice.
Oh, wonderful. It gets higher as I talk. Very squeaky. So, yes, we're proposing to put a deck on the house that we purchased this fall. 26 by 12 feet would be the maximum that we would do. We could go smaller. We're not 100% on that, but basically it goes over a patio that's existing. It's stone concrete wall patio that was there for a long time. I don't know how long, probably since 1955, but that's kind of
pictures.
where we were putting it.
Took some pictures for you guys.
Yeah.
so-
Yeah. So the patio, it's hard to see with the snow, but the,
Probably ends about.
yeah, so there is that, yep, exactly, that's the end of it. That goes out about 11 to 11 and a half feet. The rest of it is just stone, and then there are some rebar, I don't know what
If
they
you'd
were
like to point,
planning.
there's a pointer right on
Sorry.
the desk.
Oh, cool, okay. Yeah, so this is, yeah, of course, this is the wall right here. So we were thinking of not coming to the end of our property, but just kind of coming out over here. Originally, we were thinking of, there's a door that comes out of this porch area, but I don't want to make it too complicated as far as building the deck. We just want to be able to access from the porch, which is,
Right
there we
above
go,
the
there we
lattice,
go, there it is. Right here is that's a porch. So we were gonna access there and just have the deck come in here, this area. In
How high
front,
would the deck-
not all the way past this, it would be in front of this thing. So that it would come from, that's the first level, basement level, and then the second level is the main
right there.
house.
That would be the deck.
Yep,
Yep.
right there.
It's not really that helpful, but
Yeah.
that's facing the lake, so.
Yeah.
Going back to the plan, it's about 70 feet away from the water, so it's outside of the 50-foot. So, I mean, I don't really see any concerns with this, especially because it's over existing patio, it's over 70 feet away. Under the Wetlands Protection Act, it would actually be exempt because it's over 50 feet away within existing yard area. So, thought the shoreline was great. It's nice to see all the trees and vegetation there, so.
Yeah.
Looks good to me.
Steve?
I'm good.
Is it cantilevered, the deck? The upper deck, is it cantilevered or is it on
Footings?
poles?
It will be on,
A footing, a
yeah,
footing, yes.
So what are you gonna do, lolly columns, Dave?
yes. Well, right, here we go, right there is the existing wall of the patio that's there now. I've gotta see if we can put it on top of that or right off the edge. I would put 4-foot lolly columns, Bigfoots.
Do you know what the water table is?
Yeah, that's probably
We're on a
10 feet up
hill.
off the water.
We're on it, we're
The
actually up
land-
on a
The land
hill,
is,
a little bit.
Okay.
It's not a steep hill, but it's a gradual hill.
Okay, so the water table really doesn't make
No.
a difference?
Yeah.
it's all
No.
gravel too.
Yeah.
I could tell from the picture there weren't any trees in here, but no trees coming down? over
There's
here?
no
no
trees, there's
trees.
only trees in front of our house on the actual
Right there.
roadside, and then on the water
And
side, there's
one-
trees,
There's one over there.
Okay.
yeah.
Yep, they've been before us for the trees before, and I think she has a request
Yeah.
in for.
There is,
broken tree.
yeah, there's a tree over in our, right over here, but that's not really, and, I mean, it's kind of between us and the neighbor.
No cutting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm good.
No cutting for this. No.
No.
All right. Anybody in the audience like to speak on this? Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Do I? Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Close the public hearing. All right, now do I have a motion to approve the project?
Yeah, I make a motion that we approve of the request for determination with the caveats that will be indicated by our agent, which are slim to none.
Yeah.
All right, so recommend positive 2B, we're not approving any delineation.
Yeah.
It's subject to the local bylaw, and then this would be a negative number
Negative
5,
five,
because
yeah.
it's exempt, so.
Yeah.
I need a second. Second. Thank you, Paul.
Any discussion?
Paul seconded.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Carrie, we'll issue you your determination with our letter with your approval, and just have some minor conditions. We ask that you post a sign so everyone knows that you've been approved to do the work, and obviously don't stockpile big piles of soil near the water or anything like that. Very minor things, yeah.
Is there a grace period that you have for, like, as far as when you can start the project, or does that?
When are you planning on starting?
As soon as we can, but I guess depends on the weather too, but I didn't know if there was a, probably gonna need April or so.
No,
for
we have
the-
3 years. That's
Right,
your
you
grace
yeah, you have
period.
3 years
No,
that you can do the
Before she's
project.
talking about before she
Well,
can
like,
start,
is there a certain,
which
like,
is what, 20 days?
yeah, like, is there a certain, how many days you have to wait?
I don't think for a
before you-
request for determination of applicability, if it's a notice of intent, you get if you get orders of conditions,
Yeah.
that has a 10 business day appeal period, but I don't think the request
do
has
not
the
have
same
a grace
10-day
period.
appeal
So
period,
you can
so,
start
yeah.
tomorrow morning.
Yeah, so I'll,
So as I said, 3 years.
Have a good night.
Have a good night, you guys. Thanks.
All right, we're now not at 6:30. What do you want to do?
we're almost at 6:30. We have 5 minutes. Talked about this, I talked about this.
Talking about whiz bang.
This. We did that.
Stephen, that's a record.
It is. Let's keep it up.
No.
I don't know if it's
Yeah.
quick enough, but I think it would be. Actually, no, it won't be. I'll save it. I was gonna talk about Hamilton Rod, but that's a few more minutes.
Go ahead.
Do you wanna, no, cause there's something, a little
Oh, okay.
assessment you need to read and stuff. Do you
All
wanna
right.
do the meeting dates real quick, so we don't forget? Yeah. Let's do our next meeting dates while we're waiting.
All right,
We're thinking May, June, July.
So we have April. So we have April 2nd and 16:30 confirmed. For May, the 1st and the 3rd would be May 7th. and May 21st.
And you remember, I won't be here for the April 2nd meeting.
I did not remember that. Write it, no, Dave.
June?
Yeah, it's too close to April Fool's Day, I don't want to get caught.
The dates would be June 4th and June 18th. So first and third Tuesday.
July.
Now, do you want to go down to the summer schedule, July and August again?
I do.
Vicki, how did you do this? This 6/4 and 6/13, that's only 9 days.
What are you talking about?
18, 4 and 18. June 4th and June 18th.
Oh, June 19th, got it.
18.
18.
That's better. I like 18th better.
Good.
And July, single,
So it would be one meeting. We have 5 weeks in July. The 16th would be the 3rd. So we can do the 1st or the 3rd.
let's do the 16th. July 16th, gentlemen?
As far as I know, at this point.
Yeah, right. That's always the case, right? And then August.
So August, would you want to do one again with your?
Yep.
We
Okay.
should leave it flexible.
We can change it at every meeting. I mean,
Yeah, but I suggest we do the 3rd week in August. That way, if we see in July that things are backing up, we can throw it in for the
yeah.
first
First,
week.
okay,
So what's the 3rd week in August? What's the date?
the 20th, August 20th.
So August 20th.
Okay, so that's good, because then, right, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks
April
in 2 meetings.
2 and 16, May 7 and 21, June 4 and 18, July 16, and August 20th.
20th, okay,
All right?
sounds good.
Good. And we are now to 6:30.
Yep.
Notice of intent, DEP number 300. I know you have the number, right?
We don't have a number still.
Okay. Continued from the 5th, 268 Big Allen, demolition of an existing house, construction of a new single-family house and associated work site. Represented by Green Hill Engineering.
Uh-oh, they brought the whole team this time.
I know they were gonna, Carol or Mary was gonna call DEP today, and I didn't hear back from them afterwards, so I'm assuming that they didn't hear anything.
As of 4 o'clock, it still was not in.
Yeah. It's a long time. Usually it doesn't take a month to get a file number from them, but right, they can't move forward without getting that number from the state, so.
Yeah.
All right,
However,
so,
we can listen.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we made some of the changes that we talked about 2 weeks ago. There's a planting schedule in the top left corner of the plan. However, I don't really see it there.
yeah, it's,
If you go the other way, down into, I think it's the opposite corner.
oh, no. There we go.
Yeah. So we highlighted areas in green that would have there's 7 red maples, there's 4 white oaks, there's 1 sugar maple, and they're specific on the plan where they are. And then there's the shrubs that he put in this area, a little in this area, and then there's another area that we can't see too well right here, that he talks about 2 to 3 foot high bush blueberries, 2 to 3 foot sweet pepper bush, 2 to 3 foot winterberries, 3 vibram species, and 9 one-gallon mountain laurels. Then we also talked about the roof runoff. He picked 2 different areas to put having a hard time focusing where they are
It's,
here.
right
Yeah,
here?
Yeah,
Yep.
there's one of them, yep, and then the other one was right here. So, to take all the water from the roof. We talked about possibly doing something other than pavement under the driveway, He's got the driveway pitched so it all goes to the front lawn.
What?
The driveway is pitched so it goes, in this area here, the driveway is pitched so it hits the lawn area. So he thought, Mark thought that you're gonna have a lot less erosion if to keep the driveway paved at such a small surface area, allow the water to go through the lawn, percolate through the lawn. He felt if it was a gravel-based driveway, it's gonna be significant amount of erosion, potential for it to go this way as well. So, based on the pavement, the swale would go to the lawn area and there wouldn't be any erosion of any sediment at all. The well was one area we talked about possibly finding a new location for. When I talked to Mark, he was concerned about where the existing septic system is. He thought that it could be moved up in this area to get away from where it is now, but he would like to see it remain somewhere in this area of the property. Look at my notes here, what else we talked about. The large tree that was in question by the proposed well in this area here, it's approximately 100-foot tall pine that we feel is probably a potential in the future for it to be a hazard tree to the structure or anyone in the yard. So we would, and that's the only tree that's in the 100-foot buffer zone, and it's approximately 85 feet from the lake. I think that addresses most of the issues that we talked about the last time we were here.
Yeah, and so, I mean, after our meeting, I sent Mark an email, and he called, and we did go over everything that he talked about. So, right, replanting plan was something we asked for. We didn't see one last time. We have a significant amount of planting. One of the questions I had when I talked to Mark was, I thought that you might like to see a little bit more disbursement on the site, but I did think that, it was an improvement. And remember, too, there's a lot of invasives that they're gonna be removing, especially in this area, and it's one of the areas where he put a lot of the shrubs in. They will take the invasive species out of that area, so I would see that as an improvement in the shrubs going in there. So that was one of my comments there. We asked about the well, the tree obviously is a different issue with it being by itself, and that's why they would wanna take it down. We discussed the drainage. We had a question about the paved driveway. It is a small area. Like I said, he does want to pitch it towards that lawn area, and hopefully it will infiltrate there.
Did you look at the topo to see that that was the case?
The existing topo
No,
or on the plan?
On the plan, yeah.
I didn't look at it in full detail, but I'm assuming that that's how we're gonna have it constructed. And we'll talk to the contractors about
Okay.
it, but, I mean, we can zoom in and look at it a little bit better if you wanna clarify that. I asked him a little bit too about, the drainage improvements and with the sump. He did mention maybe going back out and looking at the one in the road, if that was a deep sump and it was just clogged.
We did go out and it appears to be a deep slump. However, there was still a lot of ice and debris there that was frozen that I couldn't actually get a rod down to see how deep it was.
Okay, because one of the things we were talking about is like, well, if it's a deep sump in the road, maybe you don't need to put the deep sump there, and you don't have to kind of impact that area and vegetation. But right, we don't know that necessarily, so that was a question.
The other,
Back to my notes.
if I may interject one thing, the other thing he revised on the plan, he put this pipe to be a perforated pipe so that a good part of the water coming through would penetrate into the ground rather than just carry over.
Yes, yep. Right, and he did put crushed stone below it as well to help with infiltration there. So, right, we've got 12 trees, 31 shrubs, removal of invasives. He's worked to address, based off the site, he didn't think that he could do a 2-to-1, so we talked about the inclusion of some shrubs. One thing we also talked about too is the acknowledgement of, some type of operation and maintenance plans, the commitment to do that work with the drainage. So he did put that as a note on the plan. I mean, I guess once we get to the approval process, I guess I would ask him just to write like a Word document, one-page narrative, and that's something that we include in our orders of conditions that I can reference. So when your project's done and built, you'll have perpetual conditions, and one of them will be to make sure that catch basin and stormwater system functions correctly. So it's just the same thing that he wrote on the plan. Every 2 years, someone goes out. We would add that, attach it to your certificate, so that way it stays with the property, and people know if you sell it, who's buying it, that they're required to do that work. So, and that's something that kind of consistently do on the properties for that. So it's not major, but it's just having it kind of in a document that we can make sure it gets referenced in the future too, so anyone can clearly see it. One other thing, and it's more, down the road, once work gets started, we would work with the contractors at that time. The area where the perforated pipe's gonna go in, there's a lot of vegetation over there, so we can just work with them to make sure they try to minimize their impacts while they put that in. Small things like that, that's some of the comments for that area. Make sure the invasives are removed correctly, because otherwise they could just spread them worse for you, which, yeah, but that's small stuff, so.
Paul?
Looks like they've done a lot. At this point, we can't do anything anyway until we get a number.
Yeah, but, we'd like
Looks
to
like
be,
it looks fine to me at this point.
I agree. That's all the issues. Appreciate that.
David?
Only, I agree that they have addressed most of the issues. There was one issue that I brought up a couple of weeks ago that hasn't been addressed yet, and I was wondering if Mark just felt that it wasn't an issue. The drainage off of Big Allen Road is going to have a tendency to head right for that corner and flow across the driveway and head for the lake. And what kind of protection is there for the fines that are coming off the road? Because it looks like everything else is covered. Everything else is picking it up and making sure that the water is clean when it finally exits the property and goes into the lake, with the exception of that one pathway that goes straight down to the lake on the left-hand side of the house.
So I guess we could propose a possible berm.
Well, that's what I had suggested a couple of weeks ago, was something in front.
Yeah, I apologize, I don't think it made the notes of, so we apologize that that didn't get addressed, but we could put in a small earth berm in this area.
Even if it's a
And
grassy
perhaps-
berm, it doesn't
Yeah, a
matter.
small, grass earth berm. And then I would
Like a camel
suggest,
bump.
then I could suggest to Mark in the driveway, he could do a bigger driveway detail
You could do-
showing, because right now on the plan, there's too much going on with such a small driveway to show the swale going to the lawn, but he could do, to address that at the same time.
That would be great
Okay,
for my part, thank you.
okay.
You done?
I'm done.
Yeah, I'm still not happy about losing all these trees. I'm glad that we've added some here. It's gonna be a long time before, they get to any appreciable height. And there's basically almost nothing, Anyway, if this tree's coming out anyway, I don't see any point in moving the well. The idea of moving the well was to try to save that tree. I'm a little concerned that they're proposing to put a tree right next to where this well is, though I don't know if that's,
I think we had suggested to Mark that we were just as happy to move the well closer to the road, that it might be easier for construction, maintenance if it ever needed to be done, and anything else, so.
agreed, yeah.
We're happy with that.
Okay.
anyway.
Charlton Well may love you for doing that.
That's it for me.
That's it? So we
Yeah.
really don't have any issues with the plan as outlined?
Just the DEP number.
Just the DEP number?
Minor.
And then add a berm to the front, bigger driveway detail, and then maybe move the well. Those would be the only
I don't think
comments.
anybody has said move the well.
No, they're saying that
We're gonna move
they'd
the
like to
well.
move the well.
Yeah, put it on the plan if you're gonna move the well.
I just don't want to see the well right next to
Yeah.
whatever that is, a maple or oak.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think the planning plan is a good one. They're back further from the lake, so.
So at this time, we'd request a continuation
Yeah,
if we could
right.
for 2 weeks, and I believe Mark will be back by then as well, so, and he'll come in with the rest of what we're talked about.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? All set.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Good weekend, folks.
Yeah.
And a good rest of the day.
We are,
So that's the last public
So
hearing.
now that we have a crowd attracted, we're gonna lock the doors and you all are stuck for the rest of the night.
John,
There's more seats over here, guys.
Yeah.
what do you want to do?
We don't want you to
Well-
have to stand for the next 3 hours.
Is everyone here for the South Pond discussion? Is there anyone that's not here for South Pond discussion?
I'm here for
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
all right.
Hi,
How you doing?
doing well.
You're on. Please
Floor's mine.
Get that mic and
This one?
introduce yourself to the audience and.
Hello, my name's Carl Nielsen. I work for ESS Group. And I'm a certified lake manager and have been working at Quabog and Quakem-Quasset ponds for the last 20 years or so. What I'm doing here tonight is presenting a project that was recently done by ESS for the Mosquito Reservoir, which is a drinking water supply system within the Providence water supply. And the reason I'm presenting that is because we're proposing to attempt an alum treatment at South Pond, and we're looking for the Conservation Commission to simply write a letter saying that they are not necessarily approving it, but willing to consider it. And that would allow us to pursue a 319 grant, which would help fund the project. 319 grants have been used a number of times in the state for alum treatment. What they basically try to do when you fund a 319 project, 319 grants are for non-point source pollution, which is stormwater or diffuse sources within the watershed. And when you've addressed most of those sources or reduced the input of phosphorus to a pond, then the 319 will allow you to fund sort of the effort to alleviate the symptoms from all those years of input. So we're proposing to do that now. The reason being, a lot of watershed development has essentially occurred. There's new stormwater controls being put in place in many towns. Title V septic systems have been sort of over the years been adopted. There's been a ban on phosphorus fertilizers in the state, and most recently, the Spencer wastewater treatment plant permit was issued with more stringent phosphorus thresholds. So phosphorus is the big nutrient, and alum basically binds with that nutrient and locks it up, so it's not bioavailable. That being said, let's go on to the slides. So for this reservoir, there was just excessive phosphorus over the years that led to these recurring algal blooms. Most of the phosphorus we found to be in the sediment, so that's the logical target. Next. So inactivating that phosphorus with alum was our goal, and what you see there on the right is a boat applying alum, and that white trail behind it is the precipitate. It looks greenish because the water's got a green hue to it, but essentially it's binding with the particles in the water and settling out. And alum particles are more dense than the water. And what we're doing there is trying to blanket the sediment in the deep part of the lake so that there's no internal recycling of that phosphorus. Next. So for this project, we had to actually use a crane to lift the boat because they don't actually have a boat ramp. So that was on Route 6. Had to sort of get a traffic detail and everything else, and that boat came from Nebraska to do the treatment. So there's only a couple companies that do this work, but they specialize in it. So it's part of their routine. It's a pretty specialized piece of equipment. And the area treated, you can see over there on the right, it's about 175 acres that was treated, and it was really just the deeper parts of the lake. Next slide.
How deep is the lake?
It goes up to about 40 feet.
This lake goes
Yeah.
up to about 40 feet.
Yeah.
It's a reservoir, actually, though.
It's a reservoir, yes. It's the only purpose for that is water supply. So they don't allow boats. They don't allow
No fishing, anything like that?
No, well, they don't allow fishing. People sneak in.
Yeah.
It's good fish in there. So the alum treatment here, you can see on the left, top left, the boat's basically just parked, and there's a series of tanks that were established temporarily on shore. The boat comes back every 20 minutes or so and reloads with a pump, and then they go back out and apply, as you can see in that bottom right. And the idea is they have GPS tracking, and they run track lines just like you were mowing a lawn, where they're applying that alum over sections of the lake until they blanket the entire targeted area, which was 173 acres. So it took them 7 days of 8 to 12 hours a day, depending on how much alum they had available.
They targeted the entire lake?
No, just 173 acres.
How big is the lake?
About 250, about the same size as South Pond.
So why didn't they target the entire lake? I'm
Like
trying
I said, you're really just targeting the area that's going anoxic. When the bottom of the lake goes anoxic,
Yeah,
it causes a release of that phosphorus that's been in the sediment,
right.
and it basically comes up, and then during spring and fall turnover, that bottom water is mixed with the surface water, and it just allows that, particularly the spring turnover, allows for a summer bloom to occur. So by blanketing the bottom, what they're doing is we targeted the top 10 centimeters of sediment so that there was enough alum to actually sink in, because it's more dense than even the sediment. So as that material sits on the sediment, it actually sinks through the sediment and strips the phosphorus out and locks it up. So that was, like I said, took 7 days to apply. The whole project, start to finish, from mobilizing and demobilizing, took about 12 days. Next slide. So what did we get for all of that effort? What you see here, it's a little hard to follow, but there's 2012 and 2013 and 2014 and 15, those upper left dots that you see, that's how deep down the water could be, how clear the water was. We lower a disc called the Secchi disc down into the water, and we measure how far down can we see it. And we had done sort of advanced studies of the reservoir prior to recommending the alum treatment, and you can see it was about 1 meter to 4 meters or 3.5 meters during 2012 and 13, and the clearest is in the winter. As you can see in February, you can see pretty deep. So it's an algae bloom that's causing some of that loss of clarity. When you get to 2017, you can see our pre-measurements are still, even in November and in the winter months, you can see there's 2.5 meters of clarity. We did our alum treatment, and following the alum treatment, even during a summer month, in August, we had, looks like almost 10 meters of clarity, which is a lot. So that's really great. It's the kind of response you want to see. It's what we predicted would happen. You do get some bounce back, because what you're getting from that clarity is the alum strips out phosphorus, algae, precipitate, any particles, pollen, stuff that's in the water column basically gets stripped out and settles. So you do get that deep drop and then a bounce back. Next slide. So here's a little better picture of the chlorophyll, which is a measure of algae basically. And it's, if I had a pointer, it would be really good, but.
We do.
Right there.
Oh, you're kidding. Just push the big button.
We aim to please.
Ooh, this is great. So this upper chart, what you see is this gray shaded area runs from October of 17 through November of 17. And we've done the same thing here. That gray shaded area is October through November. Same seasonal period, but a year after the treatment, basically. So comparables. We have all this data because we actually put out a data buoy that measured chlorophyll A, and we programmed it. It read every 15 minutes, which was a lot of data. But what you see is chlorophyll during this period running between 5 and 25 and as much as 30 micrograms per liter. Then we did our alum treatment in the spring of 2018, right here. And you see that same period, we're running 2 to 3 chlorophyll. So we were getting very late fall season blooms at this reservoir. That was what was happening. And if you think about it, the reason it was happening in the fall is you have that whole summer stratification where the oxygen gets used up over time. And by the time you get to fall, that oxygen layer gets very low oxygen over a big area of the lake. And so every fall you'd get these very big spikes in algal growth and blooms. And if we had allowed that reservoir to just stay that way, that bloom period would have extended further into the summer season, so that earlier and earlier in the year you'd get that low DO and the spike in phosphorus and algae that occurs with it. So we wanted to prevent that from getting worse and allow that supply to continue to be a good, healthy water quality supply for the city of Providence. Next. So, and here's just another chart. This is the phosphorus we measured, and we're kind of looking at this little baseline P versus the reduced late season P. And what you see is, again, in that October, November period, this is the bottom phosphorus level, this upper line. And you can see it's 0.15, 0.14, it's basically a very high number. Anything below 0.05 is considered somewhat healthy. 0.02 is really what you're shooting for. So these numbers are very high, 10 times what you want to be at in the bottom waters. We did our alum treatment, and the next year you can see the bottom water line didn't get above 0.03 right there. So the water in the fall was very clean, which is going to lead to multiple years going forward of nice, good water quality. Next. So why am I showing this? I'm really trying to compare with what we're proposing for South Pond. Here at Mosquito, we had initial sediment running at 1,600 megs per kg, which is a high number, high enough for us to justify doing this project and spending that kind of money. And the mean available phosphorus, how much was actually available that could break free from that sediment, was about 11% of this number. We did testing at South Pond this past year. They have 4,000 megs per kg. The lab that we had it never had seen sediment that high. So they ran multiple iterations to make sure their instruments weren't wrong. And greater than 50% of that is available for internal recycling within the lake. So we're really, it's very high and it's very available. We treated 173 acres here because they had a lot of money and were willing to do what was needed to make it a one-time effort. Here we're targeting 45 acres, And the reason for the difference is partly for the scale of the project that we think we can afford. With a 319 grant, you have to come up with matching funds. But also, we're targeting the deepest area that goes anoxic the longest. And this lake isn't as bad as Mosquito was, because Mosquito had a big area that went anoxic. South Pond is much more V-shaped and deeper, and the deeper stuff is really where the high levels of phosphorus are and where it's going anoxic for the, and releasing that phosphorus. So if we had more money, I would say we could treat more. The other thing is the more phosphorus you have, the more alum you must apply to bind that phosphorus. It's not like you just put in a cup, it's a chemical reaction, so you're basically binding alum with binding phosphorus with aluminum, and that locks up as a particulate. So if you have a lot of phosphorus, you need a lot of alum. So even though we're treating less, we're treating at a higher dose than what we did here. So it's still a lot of alum going in. This improved the clarity up to 7 meters. We're targeting greater than 5 meter improvement in clarity. For changes in pH in this, we don't anticipate any changes in pH. The reason I mention that is aluminum sulfate is typically what they use for an alum treatment, and it needs to be balanced with sodium hydroxide typically. What we ended up doing is a better approach is using polyaluminum chloride, which is much more pH neutral, and it doesn't have those swings in pH that you can have when you use aluminum sulfate. It's slightly more expensive by about, instead of $1.50 a gallon, it's running about $2 or $2.25 a gallon. It's more expensive, but less risky. So that's what we're proposing to use here. pH is important because that's really where you get your fish problems. If you can't keep your pH in check, that's when you, particularly trout, will be the ones that would be first to bubble up. The other thing is we would do a lot of monitoring during the treatment so that if there were any issues, it can be adjusted pretty quickly. This one will last between 15 and 20 years. We're projecting 15 to 25 years here. Basically, the difference being this lake has doesn't have a very large watershed, so the inputs are much more manageable. It has a big watershed on Quabog's side, but the South Pond itself, it only flushes once every 2 years. This lake flushed once every year and a half, so that's the difference. But you can see, because we're putting in such a higher concentration of alum, the cost isn't all that far off from what they spent. They did not need any permits because they're a water supplier. They're exempt. We would need to get an NOI from all 3 towns, essentially. So, next slide. I think we're almost done. This is just showing you the sort of the bathymetry of South Pond. This is where I grabbed the 3 sediment samples that we composited for analysis from this deep dark blue area, and that's really what we're proposing to treat. So right in that area. It's about a quarter of the area of the lake. It'd be done when the lake's not stratified, not in the summer, but either early spring. We did the Mosquito in April, or it would be done in fall, typically November. Real-time monitoring pH and long-term monitoring of the water quality would be done to verify that the results that we were proposing to achieve are achieved, and it's also done, we look at the sediment post-treatment to make sure that the alum is doing what it was projected to do, so that if there's a problem, we can identify it early. And there may not be another slide, but try. Oh, the wrap-up slide. So I kind of run through most of this. We know it's very high sediment, phosphorus levels. It's becoming available in the water column when the oxygen levels go low. 58% of that phosphorus is part of the lake's budget. So if you look at how much phosphorus the lake receives in a year, it's about 58% of it. So if we can cut that in half, this lake will achieve the water quality objectives of the TMDL that was written for it by the state. So that's what we're shooting to do, and by making that case, it has a very high probability of winning a 319 grant. If you were only taking 2% off the load, they'd say, well, why are we spending $350,000 to take away 2%? That just doesn't make sense. But if you can do something like that and achieve those kind of results, it scores well in the grant scoring process. And like I said, the sources to the watershed have improved or will be improving over the years.
Yeah, will be's a word, right? I mean,
Well, if you think about it, the plant itself was worse 10 years ago prior to the existing permit. And they've upgraded that permit over the last 10 years, as well as stormwater projects and things like that that have been done in the watershed. And just agricultural best management practices have improved within the watershed. Department of Ag works with farmers. It's getting better, and the inputs to the pond are better than they were back in the 1986 study that was done.
how much agriculture is being done in the watershed now?
It's about 20% of the watershed still. It's a large, it's pasture, it's cropland. It depends on what you call it. But even if it's just corn, they're spreading manure on it, as a fertilizer. So that's really what we're doing. Because the watershed of Quabog Pond is so large, it's really tough to stop all the sources. There's just a lot of land to manage. So you're never going to be able to entirely clean the input, and the input's not that bad right now. That's what we're saying. And the internal recycling, that load from that sediment from years gone by, is what is the bigger bulk of that budget. And if we can reduce that, you're going to make big improvements in water quality. And then we've tried to work on increasing the gate height between the two ponds to stop backflows of that higher phosphorus water from Quabog. And that's really not going to happen anytime soon. They're redoing the bridge there. They are going to replace the gate on the bridge, but they weren't, the state was like, we're not going to get in a fight. We'll put it back. That's all we'll do. We're not going to. They're like, if you guys all wanted it to be raised and improved, we could do it, but you're not,
Who doesn't want it?
East Brookfield's not willing to run the risk of causing flooding to people that live on the channel, despite some hydrologic studies that were done by other consultants and by the Army Corps of Engineers and others that said the amount of flooding caused by a higher gate would be about 2 inches in the grand scheme of a 6 foot, 5 foot rise that they see. So it's yes, it's increasing. So East Brookfield's like, well, if it's increasing, then I don't want to get sued. So that's really where we're at. And politically, we've had a number of selectmen there, and we can't seem to get a selectman to actually, or several selectmen to vote to do it that way. So I think, QQLA's done well in stopping sources, working to fix the Spencer wastewater treatment plant permit. They've actually gone after grants with East Brookfield to do stormwater improvements. They did a 319 grant with Brookfield a number of years ago, about 10 years ago now, that identified sources of stormwater in the watershed and fixed those. So at this point, we're coming to Sturbridge as the third town that's part of the game and saying, we'd like your support and sort of putting the ball over the goal line here. And now I've got a last slide.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. Questions?
All right. Becky, you want to start it off?
Yeah. So a couple of the things that I had for questions you kind of touched on a little bit.
Great.
So kind of the two bigger things, I guess. One is, obviously we look at our regulatory areas. We're looking at land underwater and bank and how they function in the interest for the Wetlands Protection Act, and wildlife habitat's a big thing. So I guess you talked about monitoring a little bit. So I guess I was just curious what you do for pre-monitoring, post-monitoring, and during, looking at, are you looking at invertebrates and plants, and kind of how you could look at that and what assessment you make from that?
Yeah, the science of alum treatment is pretty well understood. It gets used quite a bit. It's not a chemical in that it's not killing things. The only way it affects algae is it takes the nutrient that the algae eat away so that they can't bloom. But the algae will still be growing and healthy. There just will be fewer of them. So it won't affect algae. It doesn't affect the zooplankton because they eat the algae, and there's enough of those for them to eat. So like I say, the fish are the biggest thing, and people understand fish to be the most sensitive. And, the things that you are concerned with most is the guy's putting out his plume of alum, and it's at the surface, and it's on a windy day, and it all blows down to one end. It doesn't go where he wants it because there's too much wind. Well, that would cause all that alum to end up at one end and maybe push the fish into the end and cause a change in pH that causes them to belly up. And the reason they belly up is that it affects their gills, so they actually suffocate. So that's what we're trying to avoid, the pH change. So what we're hoping to do is you can control weather, and you can control how you monitor that plume. What we do when the applicators out there putting in his material and moving on tracks, we go out to different stations around the lake and measure pH continuously during that time, so that with a pH pen, it's very easy to measure. But you get a reading on that pH, and if you see it start to change, you can either talk to the guy and say, well, let's reevaluate. He can make sure that his equipment's running the way it should. They have continuous pH measurements on the boat for the nozzles that are coming off of it. But they're certainly, they don't want to cause a problem either, because if there is a problem, it's bad press. It's bad, it's bad for their business if they can't do it well and do it right. But we come in as a third party like on this Mswanzakit job, and we monitored basically for the 7-day period. And then we've been monitoring the lake post-treatment, not so much for impacts, because there really aren't any impacts, but more for how beneficial was it and how long will it be till the next one's needed, so that we can give the water supplier a sort of a better understanding. Because 15 to 20 years is nice, but it could be as much as 30 or 35 years. It'd be better to know that now than not. So we really want to understand it. So that's what we're doing. We're doing another project right now. We're just starting up for the city of Worcester at Indian Lake, which has algal blooms all the time. What they're proposing to do, or we're proposing to do there, is actually put in an alum dosing station on one of the streams that come into the lake, so that as flow comes up, alum gets injected into that flow as it's coming into the lake and binding with the phosphorus, so that the more flow they have a lot of stormwater problems. The more flow, the more alum, and then less flow, it shuts off, and they will just fill the tank up periodically, and that will essentially treat all of the water that's entering that lake and keep it from having the algae blooms that they have. Right now, they go out in response to a bloom, and they put in alum at a lower dose to just strip the water column out every summer. And they'll maybe do 2 or 3 treatments every summer. But what happens is you monitor the lake, and it starts to get bad, like the algae starts to get bad, and then you do your treatment, but you're too late and the bloom just gets out of hand. If you can stay ahead of it, you're doing a good job. And so, like I say, from an impacts perspective, there's no monitoring on that. It's really just it's a white precipitate. It's not, in fact, they use it in drinking water supplies to strip out the particles before they go to the filters. So it's a pretty inert material.
Do you know of any lakes that have been treated where they did pre-surveys for mussels and then post-surveys or anything, or?
It's not really, it's not really
required?
affecting mussels. No, it doesn't get It's not a requirement, but,
I'm just curious.
you know, and if you think of it, if there were a pH impact, mussels typically close up. The pH impacts are very short-lived, like bounce right back and a mussel would survive.
Yeah.
Same with a clam or a snail, you know, they can close their system off for a short period, like several hours or even a day.
And any fish kills, that would be in response, like you were saying, if
To the
everything was
pH.
concentrated and moved, it's not an issue.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
just really if it gets the pH, if the alum causes a pH shift that's, you know, if the fish can handle anything down to 6 and up to 8 and you cause it to go to, typically it goes up. So if it goes to like 9 or 10, you can have trouble with your fish. And so you need to keep it within the window of what's desirable.
So it's just kind of during treatment. There's
Yeah.
nothing that's been seen afterwards.
Yeah, like I say, it's
long-term
very
or-
short-lived because once that alum binds up with the phosphorus, it's no longer available and it settles right out to the bottom.
All right. One other thing, so I'd reached out to Fish and Wildlife, and I was trying to get like a general
Yeah.
opinion from them. I didn't really get that, but it is mapped for a rare plant. So it's the
Yeah,
dwarf.
dwarf bulrush.
Yeah. So I just kind of asked, for a little feedback on that. So I think they would have some requirements for just to think about for surveying for the plant ahead of time, and then
Yeah, they
cetera.
know, we have a very good understanding of where the dwarf bulrush is because of we do herbicide treatments there every year, and that's part of our current permit.
Okay.
One of the stipulations in the current permit is that we do not treat when water is elevated above, I forget what the elevation is, but it's essentially if the dwarf bulrush is in the water, we don't treat. So that's a current standing stipulation, but this, like I say, would not impact aquatic plants at all.
Okay.
It will not rooted, not submerged, has no impact to aquatic
Okay.
plants.
Right. So it sounds like you've kind of got a little bit of an understanding there based off of the
Yeah.
aquatic stuff that you're doing. But I think what she had said is that they might want like a plant survey. So I would recommend maybe just reaching out.
Yeah, we
to
could
them
provide it
too,
to her.
and-
There
Yeah.
a couple of their pre-approved natural heritage botanists have done that survey recently and
Okay.
within the last 3 years, I believe. And so
Okay.
we can provide that to them
Okay.
if they need it.
Okay. And one of the things that she said is that given that this plant is associated with seasonal water level fluctuation zone, treatment during spring and fall could be more problematic. So.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, like this lake, fall is a really good time. We see pretty low water levels there. But, as we go through the NOI process, natural heritage has to be part of the.
Oh, right, and yeah.
So we
No, I
have to, they would be fully on board.
No, I just didn't know there's a tight time frame with permitting or whatnot, so I'd make sure that.
Yeah, and like I say, this, we're really just we're not looking for approval at this point. We're just looking for you to maybe issue a letter to support the project in concept so that we can go forward with a grant application. What they don't like in the grants is for them to approve $300,000 to the town of Sturbridge to do a project like this and then have the project shot down by the commission because no one talked to the commission in advance and they're all against it. So that, because then that money didn't get spent with some community that might have been able to better use it. So we're trying to avoid that and
Makes
come
sense.
to you first before we go to the selectmen and get some approval from them and a letter of support from the selectmen.
Good. You all set? Paul?
So you go out and you do this treatment thing now. How does it get monitored over the next 25 years? Who's doing that? The town or?
Nope. Typically, the town right now studies the lake. I think you sample the lake once a year.
Okay.
So there's a long-term database available. There's been a number of studies done in the past. We're proposing to do water quality monitoring going forward. We're starting that this summer pre-grant application. We did some work last summer, and assuming QQLA is willing to continue that, it would be something that they could do themselves. It's not, it's really a surface grab and a bottom grab, and you send it to the lab and read the numbers. It's not all that complicated.
So what happens
can be
if
cheap.
at the end of the year you find there's no difference? Does that, you come back or where?
Come back, well, there will be a difference. There has to be a
Well,
difference.
I mean,
It's-
just, theoretically, let's say there isn't.
You mean the water is just as bad as
Yeah,
it is
right.
now? I'm probably getting strung up by all these people here. Yeah, I wouldn't want to have that happen. That would be very bad for my business and bad for the treatment company's business, so,
So it's never happened as far as you know?
no. It's a chemical problem, so as long as you're putting in the right amount of material and you have the phosphorus to bind it, it will bind.
So it lasts up to 25 years?
It should, yeah.
So in 25 years, then you have to come back and spend another 300 and something thousand, or,
I'm gonna vote against it in 25 years.
Yeah, I mean,
99.
you know, it is, to your point, it is a project that's treating a symptom of ills as opposed to treating the source. But when you look at it more on a more localized level, the problem at South Pond is that there's a lot of phosphorus at the bottom, and every year that turning over of the lake brings that phosphorus back. And if you can stop that cycle, what we're trying to do, and it may last a lot longer than that, but I don't want to promise that. The reason what you're doing is stopping that cycle. Every year that phosphorus gets brought back, algae grow and bloom, and then they settle back to the bottom. If you can stop that algae from growing and blooming, now you've stopped all that annual decay and dropping of material, so it actually accelerates or helps improve over time. You still have the backflows that occur in the watershed, but if you can bring it back to a level that's, you know, if we could afford to do more, I could say we could get a better, longer lasting treatment, but you know, whether you spend 600,000 now or 300 now and 300 later, in 25 years, you know, you kind of look at it that way and say, well, let's break it up a little and make it more palatable.
okay?
Relevant to that question,
We need to get a
Yeah,
mic
we're
to
gonna,
him, please. No, there's one right there that's portable.
We really, let's wait to open it up to the audience. Let's just go through and then we'll go to the audience, okay?
I'll wait.
Our standard process is to hear from your man, to hear from our lady, and then each of the members gives whatever rude comments we have to make, and then we invite you all to attack.
Okay. So, You're on.
Well, as I said the last time this was brought up, being a limnologist myself, back when I was working, it's a standard.
1812.
It's a standard process. I just happened to have lunch with an old pal that used to run the Clean Lakes program for DEP, and we talked about this project and and he's very familiar with South Pond and QQ, Clerk and Closet. Anyway, and he talked about, you might even know Rick McVoy.
Oh, yeah.
So Rick and I go back 30 years or so, and we talked about this project. He said it's a perfect lake for it, very deep, and that's what you want, is to have very steep banks like our bottom topography on a lake. And I mean, he wasn't saying go in and tell them to do it. He was just saying standard process, standard fare. Nothing real fancy other than the cost of alum and treating it. So it's like I said before, it's a standard process for treating certain types of problems in lakes. There's still going to be enough phosphorus coming into the lake that it's not going to become super oligotrophic and nothing is,
Right.
no fish, because
there'll
there's
be-
still going to be phosphorus coming in, and that's something that we really haven't talked about, but that's important.
Yeah,
You don't want it to be like one of the lakes up in the Adirondacks where
desert, right.
where there's really super oligotrophic, and there's a name for that, but anyway, so those are my thoughts, and how you know, I drafted a letter saying that, that we recognize that there's an algae problem, and I didn't go into cyanobacters or anything, I just said, recognize from our own monitoring program that the Concom started, and however, what next step we want to say regarding alum treatment, I think is up to this board, or the commission, so those are my thoughts.
Steve, let me ask you a question. As you've heard from experts, past and present, we continue to do a better job with non-point source pollution, and all of our wastewater treatment plants are doing better and better. And algae blooms are coming out of the woodwork.
That is correct.
Why? If we're doing everything better.
Well, a big part of it is sequestered, it's not sequestered, it's phosphorus. 30% of the phosphorus that's entered into a lake ends up in the sediment. And it's a continuous process. That's not even talking about the recycling. I'm talking about just the phosphorus that comes in from the watershed, or in this case, from the river. So it is a continuous process. The number of lakes that are treated is actually a fairly small number, and what they're generally treating is a Band-Aid that's a lot smaller than the Band-Aid that we're talking about here. As this gentleman said, we're not treating the source of the problem, which is what DEP, I tried to do for 30 years that I worked for them, but they're putting a Band-Aid on it that will have enough of a control on this lake that, that we should not have cyanobacter blooms. The phosphorus just won't be there, won't be available. So yeah, you're right. I worked in the office with Joni Baskinis, and she went around and responded to cyanobacter, blue-greens back when I started, cyanobacters, and you're right, they're everywhere. It's just like red tide in the ocean. There's just a lot of it occurring. It's generally nutrient related. It's always nutrient related, and I don't know that we're ever going to get rid of the algae blooms.
Well, and part of it is,
We will here.
like we say, if you think of all the ponds or lakes, this Swansec's a reservoir. It has a dam, and it's basically supposed to be a river, but it's been impounded, and over time, that sediment and phosphorus build up, and it's not noticeable at first, but over the years, it becomes a worsening condition. And when you get to that tipping point, that's when you start to get those blooms. We're trying to make this happen before it turns into a lake like Indian Lake, which is blooming every summer from May through October. It's a piece of green.
Yeah.
We want to get it before it gets to that, obviously, because when you get to that, the life in the pond is dead. There's no aquatic plants in Indian Lake, other than right near the shore. It's because they can't get light from the surface. They have a lot of nice carp and bullhead, but they don't have a lot of trout. You know, that's what we're trying to avoid here. The other reason that you have blooms occurring and accelerating is temperatures are rising a little bit, and summers are a little longer, ice-off's a little earlier, and that heating of the water accelerates the growth of algae.
Right.
My comments.
David?
Let's do a
Say
mi-
one- oh,
Go ahead,
okay.
Steve. Finish up.
Just that part of the problem about, you know, you're talking about wastewater treatment plants being improved. There's an economic factor in there, that the technology to lower phosphorus in wastewater treatment plants. It's so great having background music when I speak. I just feel important there for a minute, you know.
Your time is up.
Time is up.
That's what it is.
Anyway, you know, the trying to develop the technology to reduce the phosphorus levels in the rivers, and ultimately, and we have a case where we have a point source impacting a pond, is a very difficult, very slow process to improve the technology that doesn't bankrupt the town, and that's why we're down to .2 in the permit for Spencer, In 5 years, it'll be 0.1.
Mm-hmm.
And EPA would really like to see that 0.1, but they know that they have to be realistic. That word practicable is in there, so it's just a fact of the state of the art of the, not so much the science, but the technology to reduce those levels. So it's happening, but it's happening.
David, you're up.
The science has been good so far. I have a number of questions about it, but first I want to bring everybody back to reality. These guys are talking about point source, and that doesn't mean a damn thing to most of you. However, what I'd like you all to do, because most of you have the same color hair I used to have, is 15 years ago, we did not have a septic treatment system for the town. What we had was septic systems that dumped directly into the ground. And all of y'all used Tide or some other detergent that was loaded with phosphorus in order to be able to help clean your clothes. Where do you suppose that phosphorus went when it left your septic system? It ended up in a body of water somewheres. So to answer Ed's question, it was building up in that body of water and was not getting taken out in any way, shape, or form. And now they're trying to take it out. We still have some additions that are taking place as a result of some of the activities of some of the other towns. However, we have stopped the phosphorus entry from your laundry basket. We have stopped the phosphorus entries from your toilet bowl, and now it's a matter of being able to work on other things. So maybe the alum treatment is one of the ways to go, but I still have some questions.
Sure.
You talked about the thermocline, and you indicated that it was moving the phosphorus off the bottom. I've never considered that before. I always thought the thermocline simply did a temperature inversion.
Thermocline's where it is. When you lose the thermocline, basically during the fall, when it's
Right.
the same
The
temperature
transition.
from top to bottom, the bottom water actually comes to the surface.
Carrying with it the fines?
No, not carrying any particulates. So what happens is you've got a stratified lake. Summer water's at the top, nice and warm. Bottom water's really cold. When that bottom layer goes anoxic, as the season goes on, it somewhere gets to the point where there's no oxygen at the bottom of the lake. There's no life. There's nothing down there because it can't live without the oxygen. There's bacteria and things. What happens is at that point, that's when the sediment phosphorus is released. It basically disassociates from the particles in the soil, and it becomes dissolved phosphorus in the water column, free phosphorus floating around. Then that stratification disappears as you get to fall, because the surface water cools and everything top to
That's
bottom
settling.
is that 4 degrees C, and a windy day basically causes the whole thing to mix. It's very easy to mix a whole lake once it's all the same. And you get an inversion that happens when the surface gets colder, keeps dropping down to 3 degrees, 2 degrees, almost ice. That 4-degree water at the bottom rises up to the surface, with it bringing all that dissolved phosphorus, which in the winter, not as big of a deal because there's no sunlight, but it does the same thing in the spring. So you have anoxic all winter long at the bottom, and in the spring you get that spring turnover that occurs, and that brings up that anoxic water full of dissolved phosphorus and places it at the surface for the whole summer. So if you can prevent there's 2 ways to prevent that phosphorus from coming out of the bottom. One is to lock it up chemically like we're doing with the aluminum compound. The other would be to oxygenate your bottom. Pump air down over the entire lake bottom with an air stone and bubblers, and there's lakes that do that as well. That's a solution. It doesn't get rid of the nutrient, it doesn't bind it, but it's also an expensive solution, and for a lake of this scale, probably not the most practical solution either.
Okay.
So those are your 2 options. We're choosing this option as the best, and I think will certainly pay off in the long run.
Despite my list, I'd like to ask 2 more questions, but not of you.
Go for it.
We have the representative from the Lakes Association that actually is in charge of doing the lake testing. Can you give me 2 numbers? Secchi disc readings for the Cove and DO readings for the Cove.
For South Cove,
Because I remember the Secchi disc readings were about 5 meters in the cove. But I haven't been on the boat in 3 years. About the same?
14 and 19 feet, that's.
Yeah, okay. So those are current Secchi disc readings. And what about DO?
Depends on where you are in the column.
Yeah. Down near the bottom.
You get a, you will get a drop off at the bottom,
Yeah,
like, depending upon how close you are to the bottom, you make it to the bottom.
is it a severe drop-off, Chris?
Yeah, well,
The thermal plant.
you'll get an increase when you hit the thermal plant, you're going down. And it drops off. When you get below 5 feet, you hit a.
Come close to zero?
I gotta go. I know.
Oh, but it's low.
And you go out.
Okay,
What time of year?
August.
Okay.
July, last day in July or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, it gets worse as the year goes on, so.
Stephen?
I really appreciate this presentation. I feel a lot better about this
Yeah.
personally, and hearing some of the comments too. I also appreciate all the I'm assuming support. That's everyone that. Yeah, so that's great. I don't really have any questions. I think it's been covered by other people, but I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for that.
All set?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to turn it to the audience. I don't have any questions either. I think mine have all been answered. Concerns, but, asking, questions like how are you sure you get the polyaluminum chloride everywhere that you need it to be? So, I mean, and is that a part of the contract?
Yeah, we when we go forward, if the project gets approval, if it gets funding and we can
Yeah, that's what I-
move forward, we will actually pull together as a consultant a set of specs that we would put out to bid.
Okay.
And we can all work on what those specs include, but one of the things we did on the Mosquito, which was for, we were doing things as complicated as looking at the labels on the delivery truck and the bill of lading and the aluminum content of the material being delivered to the site and making sure that it matched the specs and resulted in the amount of kilograms of aluminum per meter squared of bottom area that we had spec'd, so that they couldn't bait and switch and give us something that was more dilute or less than what we wanted. So every truckload, and there were 70 truckloads that we looked at, we checked the bill of ladings from the chemical company that was delivering it to the site, confirmed that that's what they were using, and that all of that material passed through, tallied it all up, and made sure that 70,000 gallons of alum were delivered and put into the lake.
All right.
And then they do GPS tracking. So they give us track lines every single day of what areas they covered, and we make sure that those match up with the area that needed to be applied and that the right number of gallons were diffusely, spread across that area.
Okay. All right, anybody in the audience like to be heard from? Marita?
Yeah, Marita Tassi from South Pond. I wanted to comment that I've been on the lake for 25 plus years, and ever since I've been on the lake, this alum treatment has been a subject of discussion. But now I think we're doing it because, we're pushing it more because of the increased algae blooms and the deterioration of the lake quality. Could you address that?
Yeah, that coupled with the fact that the sources have become more under control, or at least we know what we can control and what we can't. If you look at the TMDL said you need to fix these sources in the watershed, and you need to stop the backflow at the gate. We got a grant from DEP to fund the hydrologic studies that were needed to address the backflow at the gate, and they weren't accepted by the town of East Brookfield as adequate. So DEP was very upset that they spent money that really was not helpful.
Next office.
Yeah, and so they were just flabbergasted that this is holding a project like this up, because that's a very simple fix. An extra panel on the gate to stop about 30% of the backflow phosphorus load, which isn't all of the phosphorus load, but it would have made a nice little dent in the phosphorus coming in. You know, so, but that's a dead end. So I think if we explain that in the grant and we explain the benefits that have been achieved through, you know, and look at what you just did for the last house that was in here. You're going through and saying, we want more trees. We want the drainage to be caught at the road, not run across the property. All that stuff is happening in your town and every other town. The conservation commissions are smarter. They know what they're doing. Not all of them, but most of them. And they're getting better at it so that people aren't just shaving down the trees and putting no buffers along the lake shore. And these folks know that. They understand who's got a good front yard and who doesn't. And, you know, you're doing the right things. But how much you can gain is small compared to the gain that you can get from an alum treatment at this point when 58% of your load is internal. You gotta make a dent there. Yes.
Next.
Oh, sorry.
No, you gotta use the mic. Please.
Talk loud enough. I just
No, you can't.
It's recorded.
Meg Noyes, South Pond. I just want to know, I was shocked when I heard ours was as high as it was. And as you said, they were shocked at the testing lab. That we had such a high phosphorus content. And it's like, we have to do something.
Yeah.
Hand it back in back of you, ma'am.
Go visit South Pond. Two things. One of which we all have to realize that we're reacting to a problem that started 80 years ago and was just as bad all the way through 35 years ago. That it was a huge point source. The Spencer wastewater treatment plant used to put out 50 times more phosphorus than it is today. 50 times. We have documentation that the output in 1976 was 5 milligrams per liter, not 0.2. And higher prior to that time. They were just beginning to realize how bad it was some 35 years ago, which was the beginning of the first upgrade and the transfer of ownership of the plant. That's one. Two, please take another look at the SS report, which was a situation where our situation in South Pond sediments was finally measured. Wasn't measured for the TMDL. So this is an opportunity to correct the TMDL. And now please realize that the internal recycling is now the biggest source of phosphorus in South Pond.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah, Peter Mimo, 76 South Shore Drive. We've been residents for 15 years, Sturbridge on South Pond. I'd like to restate something that's obvious, but I'd like it to go on the record just to remind everyone that you're listening to a group of a lake association that involves East Brookfield, Brookfield, and Sturbridge for Quabog and for South Pond. We're being very proactive to get your support to finish the letter that you apparently have begun that supports this activity. This 228-acre water body belongs to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It doesn't belong to us. We're the abutters all around it. And here we are supporting to spend this kind of money to work for a grant with your support to improve the water body that belongs to the state of Massachusetts.
And that's why DEP was so upset when they didn't get passed. And oddly enough, when I was speaking with my friend Rick McVoy, and I said, oh, we're proposing a an alum treatment is being proposed, he said, shut the gate. And then put the alum in. So, yeah, we're not gonna do that.
We could shut the gate, but what I've learned here tonight, or reinforced tonight, is this has been collecting at the bottom of a 70-foot deep lake for years and years. It's collecting down there. And this plan seems like the only plan that's going to encapsulate it down there or mitigate it down there in the 55 or over depth. And there's a lot of money that needs to be spent to push that, to do that. And this seems very clear to me. My last point is, I paid a visit to the assessor's office in one of the 3 towns, and the gentleman there helped me prove to me that Sturbridge has the longest amount of shoreline on this. And he also mentioned that Sturbridge has the most resources, U5 +1,